Hello, everyone. Thank you. This is Father Son Galaxy. I am Kerwin, and this is Keith. And this is our spoiler review of Marvel's and Sony's Madam Web.
I stole multiple taxis to get here. I stole a taxi. I took the license plate off. Stole an ambulance and totaled it.
Yeah.
I had some people using defibrillator to shock a spider person on the roof of my car. Rammed it with them multiple times with both cars. It was chaotic. I was being chased by Ezekiel Sims on the way here, if you can tell.
Yeah. And this all makes sense, doesn't it? It's these are items that happen. Yes.
He was in the Amazon with my mom researching spiders right before she died.
Right before she died. Yes.
Who wrote that? That line isn't even in the movie.
No, and they took it out, which is interesting.
I don't think they took it out. I think it was just cobbled together.
No. That line was not in the movie. It was in the trailer, but then they
together
took it
out of multiple lines.
Okay. So let's just come right out and say it. This movie had more holes than Swiss cheese.
This movie had more holes than Quicksilver at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yeah, we saw it this past weekend.
Rest in peace, Quicksilver.
Yeah, and we were, okay. Let me come out and say this. So I'm kind of torn because you remember Batgirl.
Yeah.
All right. That was supposed to be released by Warner Brothers a couple of years ago. And I was so excited for this film. It was supposed to be released on Max, I think, or HBO Max at the time.
Well, I think it was meant to be a theaters release, but
yeah, I don't remember if it was going to be a theatrical release or it was going to be.
But it ended up not being either one.
Yeah. And then we know what happened, so
Warner Brothers shelved it.
Warner Brothers decided that they were not going to release it and they're just going to write it off as a loss.
Yeah, basically what they said was that they didn't feel it was high quality enough for cinema, but that it wasn't low quality enough for streaming. So they decided, instead of releasing it for a limited time and then throwing it straight to streaming, they just weren't going to release it at all, which is shocking to me because the movie they did release, The Flash, starring a felon, ended up flopping.
Interesting. Okay. Well, all right. Wait a second. So, all right, I wasn't going with The Flash, but
remember when somebody working on The Flash said this movie is so good you'll forgive Ezra Miller for all his past crimes?
Yeah. Their past crimes. Yeah, that's not the case. All right. The crime.
Well played, Warner Brothers.
Okay. Well, so let me get back to my point here. So I was upset that I didn't get a chance to see Batgirl to determine for myself if this was a movie I was going to like or not like. I, the consumer, the one who's buying into this product, should make the decision as to whether I like the movie or don't like the movie. And I don't think it's a good idea for distributing companies to decide, well, we're not going to put it out there, so don't worry about seeing it, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter. You're not going to see it anyway.
I mean, that's just so random. At that point, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. You've already sank so much money into this. You might as well try to recoup some of it. At the very worst, if the movie fails and brings in like $30 million, which is incredibly low if it goes worldwide, then if it brings in even that much, at least that's some money you can get back. But instead of that, they decided to completely shelve it and use it as a tax write-off, which I am utterly floored.
But now, here's Madam Web.
Which
the other side of the coin, where this movie, Sony went ahead. I don't know how they, I guess we'll never know how they really felt about the movie, because I'm sure there were, executive producers.
Well, I know how Dakota Johnson felt about that movie. Well, she got rid of her talent agency right after the trailer for Madam Web dropped.
Okay.
So she fired them.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And apparently that wig that Julia Cornwall was wearing caused heat sickness. So there's also that.
This movie was doomed from the start.
So this is how Liberty dies.
Yeah.
Absolutely no applause.
So now I wonder, would we have been better off not seeing this film at all?
I don't know.
Or is it okay to go ahead and see it and then say, it's not for me?
I'll say this.
Yeah.
I was the only person in there who was laughing because I just found it terribly funny.
Yeah.
And also,
And it's not a comedy.
You know how Joker was sitting in the background when Commissioner Gordon got promoted? He was like, and then
prison,
that was literally me in the back of the room, like,
we sat in the back row.
good job, Sony.
Yeah. The theater was pretty much empty. I think there were a few people.
People were actually getting up and leaving, which seems to be a common experience in Madam-Web. Like, from what I've heard, most people were either seeing it in empty theaters or people were leaving the theater.
Yeah. Well, the theaters were empty because I don't think there were enough interest. All right. So let's, like basic rundown of what this movie's about. All right. So
I'm going to do a rundown of the plot.
Yeah, go ahead.
With a little to no commentary in there.
Okay.
And then I'll go back and I'll talk about the things that I find ridiculous, the things I find funny, the things that just don't make sense.
Okay. All right. Let's go. All right. Let's talk about what is this movie about?
The beginning of this movie, we start with Madam Web's mother. She's and Ezekiel Sims is in the Amazon with her mother, researching spiders right before she died.
Yeah. It was a good thing she did before she died, because after she died, it would have been.
Yeah, if she died,
would have been a little difficult to
spiders. That
research the spiders
to
after you die. But go ahead.
That would have been hard to research the spiders if you're a ghost, because you can't get them. You're like,
yeah.
Oh, why does my hand keep going through the spider?
Yeah.
So she ends up finding the spider. She will not let go of it. She's also 9 months pregnant, and Ezekiel Sims decides, hey, I really want this spider.
Yeah.
So he shoots everybody, including Madam Web's mother, and then she ends up giving birth, but she passes away.
Well, okay, you jump we get these spider people
who look like spirit Halloween versions of Spider-Man.
Yeah, they look like creatures from the Black Lagoon.
They look like somebody threw red paint and a net over themselves and called it a day.
Okay.
So they save her. She gets a spider bite, which gives Madam Web powers. She is born. The mother passes away. And we cut to present day.
30 years later.
And by present day, I mean 20 years ago, back in 2003. So
yeah. So Cassie Webb is the baby that was born at the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
She is now 30 years old. And she is an EMT worker, right? All right. So, EMT, they go around saving people. And there was an incident where there was a car that was hanging on the bridge. And the driver.
The 180-degree rule.
What is that?
It's got something to do with the camera, because you're not supposed to have it 180 degrees or something.
Oh, I never heard about that before. But anyway.
I don't know. I don't get it.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So this driver is still in the car. He's still strapped in a seatbelt.
Like, I'm going to cut your seatbelt, okay? And then Ben pulls him out.
Yeah, so these two emergency service technicians.
Ben Parker. Uncle
apparently.
Ben, who they keep making jokes about dying in this movie. Like, one is like, Cassie says, oh, what? You've never been shot at in Queens before?
Yeah, that was a really crack on Queens. But anyway, you could tell that this movie was not written by someone who's from New York.
I mean, they were just throwing, they were casting aspersions for Ben.
Well, okay. But anyway, so they try to save this gentleman. Cassie is way inside the car on the end where it's going to tip over.
Like, you would think you would have
the end facing the ocean.
You'd think you'd have some diligence about that.
Or the river.
Why didn't she just get on the side where Ben was, cut the seatbelt, and then have Ben pull him out? Because there's no sense in getting all the way in the car to cut the seatbelt, but you could have just done it from the other side.
So apparently they got the gentleman out, the driver, but she goes down with the car and she has this, this near-death experience or whatever.
The windshield cracks and it's like a web.
Right.
And that transports her into visions, and then she starts having a bunch of visions of the future. Basically, in the comic book, she's a mutant, so this kind of awakens her mutant powers. And she is still at work, Now she's having these visions, and Ben checks her out.
She sees the future.
Yeah, she sees the future. Ben is reading her pulse, but then she predicts the pulse, and Ben's like,
how'd you do that? Yeah, right.
By the way, Adam Scott is like the best part of this movie, because he's putting the work in to make this role convincing and enjoyable.
As much as he can, Yeah. Right. Okay. So then so that's her backstory. All right. Or that's what Cassandra Webb, she has this power of psychic abilities to see the future. Fine. All right. Now, the villain, Ezekiel Sims. I want to talk about him.
Oh, God.
All right, because
most of his lines were dubbed in afterwards, apparently.
yeah,
so.
I I don't. It could be, in my opinion, probably the worst written villain I have ever witnessed on the screen.
I mean, this
because
is
I had
literally
no
copy
idea.
and pasted plot.
I had no idea what his motivation was. First of all, so this movie is taking place 30 years later. So he, as the actor, I don't remember the actor's
Tahar
name.
Rahim.
Tahar Rahim looks exactly the same 30 years later. So I don't know. Maybe didn't have enough money to do the CGI.
I mean, he has like a few gray hairs here and there.
Yeah, right. But
other
still,
than that, he looks.
I mean, he looked like he just stepped
same.
right out of the Amazon 30 years later. But anyway, so apparently he has these recurring nightmares or dreams, whatever.
So he's insane.
Okay.
he has a dream that these 3 spider women are going to absolutely beat him up and watch him get chucked out of a window.
Yeah.
So naturally, as any normal person would do when they have a dream of falling off a building, he grabs NSA technology, hires a whole agent to monitor every security camera in the area, nay, the state, dare I say, and then uses image tracing technology. This is 2003, by the way. This is the same year that the Eric Bana Hulk movie came out. Finding Nemo was like coming out that year.
I get it.
Apple was a new thing that year.
I see.
So he uses image tracing technology to take the exact visions that he has in his dreams, not only digitize them in 2003, but age them back 10 years to a point where it's actually accurate and you know what they look like. So, Ezekiel Sims, being the absolutely normal person he is, decides to stalk these 3 now teenagers in 2003 so that he can take them out and that he can survive. Which, how does he know there's not going to be other spider people to take their place? I'm not sure. How does he know this is going to happen? I'm not sure.
So his dream is that these 3 spider women are coming after him. They want to kill him, right? Now, after I saw the movie, I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that he wasn't actually having a dream. But he also had the same type of superpower that Cassandra has, where he could see the future. Now, if that's the case, they did not spell that out in the movie.
Yeah, that's
right. That was very confusing, because when he was having these recurring dreams or whatever, these visions, he was waking up out of his sleep.
Yeah,
so you would
happening
assume
at night. You think it's a dream,
right?
I mean,
so you're thinking it's a dream. So my point was, well, if it's a dream, it means it's not real, and it also means that
gateways into other universes, as Dr. Strange explained.
Okay, I'm talking about reality. All right, so if you're waking up in a dream, it's not real. And when I'm saying it's not real, is like it didn't happen.
Yeah,
and even the people, yes, in the dream could also not be real.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean,
he could have been looking.
Spider women just literally don't exist.
He could have been looking for 3 people that don't exist. But of course, so now if you saw The Dark Knight, Lucius Fox, Bruce Wayne had this massive. He had multiple cameras placed all over the city, Gotham City, so he could find the criminals and listen to the police radar, police radios, and see where things are going down, and he would be there before the police get there. So this guy, don't know how he made his money, but apparently he is very wealthy. He has the same setup. They never explain how he got it, but he's Bruce Wayne. Apparently, he is just
Bruce
as
Wayne
rich
with
as
none
Bruce
of the
Wayne.
charm.
Bruce Wayne with yeah. So anyway. But then he was able to find a match, right? So he told the person that was working at the computer, all right, find these 3 girls. Here's their description. And guess what? They find the exact 3 girls that they're looking for, which is ridiculous.
What are the chances that they're all in New York and they will all be at the same train station with Madam Webb?
Yeah, so they're all friends. They know each other.
Well, they're not. They don't know each other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
They know each other later, but they're all at the same train station.
Oh, okay. That's right. That's right. So
portrayed as a rich delinquent.
Yes. Yeah.
One is an unconfident nerd, and the other one likes math.
Yes, she loves math.
That is Anya's really only personality trait.
That's right.
And she's no fun at all.
So it's Cassandra that brings these 3 young girls or young women together, and she saves them, in the train station scene,
Yeah,
but she
because
can't
Ezekiel
tell
Sims was
them.
going to grab them by the throat and throw
Right,
them
yeah.
into
So
their
this
seats.
guy in his suit looks like it came out of a Halloween costume
This suit
store.
looks like it came out of the
Yeah,
Five Below version of Spirit Halloween.
yeah, right,
And
yeah.
Spirit Halloween is already a Five Below type store. So.
There you go. That's exactly what I meant. So
A Dollar Tree costume.
so she saves them from his character, Sims. Okay, and then
He acts like
she
a
runs
Simpsons
off
character.
and steals a taxi and takes these girls into the woods and say, "Hey, you stay here until I get back."
By the way, Cassandra Webb is an EMT.
Yeah.
So, if anything, don't you think they would have her government records on hand, considering
Oh,
she
sure.
works for the department?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. They know her. They have her ID and
They
everything.
have. I'm sure they have her home address too.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
So the fact that they haven't called her or tried to track her down or find her whereabouts is shocking. Also, they established this mechanic that throws off the movie. Nobody else can see Ezekiel Sims. So these cops that he's beating up and eventually choking out, they can't see him. Which makes no sense, because if you look at the diner scene, the boys behind the girls, after they hop off the table, are reacting to that car driving through and hitting Ezekiel Sims. And they also react when Ezekiel Sims advances. So I don't know if they have superpowers too. By the way, they play for Midtown High, which is the school Peter goes to.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, how about that? An Easter egg.
Yeah, thank you, New Rock Stars.
Okay.
Watch their breakdown.
Okay, gotcha.
Why did they have that line that only Madam Web and the girls can see Ezekiel Sims?
Yeah, I don't know. All right. So now look, I think you get the message where this movie's going. It doesn't
Down into
get
the garbage bin.
It doesn't get any better. But the point I want to bring up is, so it looks as if Cassandra kidnapped these three young women.
Yeah, probably because Sydney Sweeney's character shouts it out like, "Hey, she's kidnapping us!"
Right. So Cassandra steals a taxi, right? Right under the nose of the taxi driver. Gets in a cab, takes them into the woods, leaves them there, and then she goes off. I don't remember what it was she was doing. And these girls go over. They walk over to the diner.
The spiders.
Yes, you're right. I remember her going back home and reading the book and trying to figure out whether she had the spider powers, because her mother was injected by the spider before she died. And she tried to climb the wall.
He was in the Amazon researching spiders with her mother before she died.
And she realized that she could not crawl on the wall. Okay, so now back to the diner, and these three girls are supposed to be laying low, right? Because, the police are after them because they're victims of a crime. But instead, Britney Spears starts to play, and they get up on the table. They start
playing Toxic and dancing in the most awkward ways. Like one of them's doing this.
Okay, well,
and the other ones are making like a water shape.
Yeah, well, for people who can't see us, if they're listening to the audio, they're just,
one of them's pretending to snorkel.
Yeah, like they're holding their nose, and they're, I don't know.
Anyway, I sound like this when I hold my nose.
Okay.
I sound like I have a voice modulator.
Yeah. Okay. So look, the movie's a mess. Okay, let's just.
No, Dad, that movie's not a mess. It's a masterclass in making messes.
Yeah, so if you want to be a filmmaker, right? If you strive to be a screenwriter or a filmmaker, it's good to know what makes a great film versus what makes a terrible film.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And this is supposed to be a Marvel film.
Yeah.
So naturally, there's that third act where all the characters get their suits and they all have a massive fight with the big bad.
They never got their suits.
For goodness sake, they even had something similar in Loki, the last season, where Loki kept going back in time to try to stop Sylvie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even that was more action than we get in this movie. The entirety of the action is just Madam Web losing it with this car and hitting Ezekiel Sims repeatedly.
Yeah,
by the way,
wouldn't die.
Ezekiel Sims must have had his damage hacks turned on, because this dude's around getting hit by a car twice, getting ran over by a car, getting shot by a defibrillator, having fireworks exploded on him, and literally all of that, and a falling PepsiCo letter does him in.
Yeah, right. It was.
I
think it was
repeat,
the S in Pepsi, right?
the
Okay.
S in Pepsi deletes him. You serious?
Hey, look, if you've seen this movie, you understand what we're saying. If you don't, it doesn't make any sense
That's a
to
little
you.
J. Jonah Jameson reference because he's Mattie Franklin's uncle.
Yes. Okay. All right. You know what? So let's talk about the cast.
Can I finish the plot?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let's finish the plot. Yes. Please. Go ahead.
So Madam Webb, being the very responsible leader that she is, and the responsible mother figure that she is, goes in there, grabs a knife, tries to fight Ezekiel Sims, gets flipped backwards, and then all of it goes back. She is
You're
late.
talking about the warehouse?
No, I'm talking about the diner.
We're still at the diner. Okay,
she is late, so she goes back. And by the way, we're using the song "Toxic" to gauge what time it is, and then they start playing the soundtrack over "Toxic," which is toxic. You know, I don't know why you would do that.
I actually like the song. You know,
well, but they're playing the soundtrack over it.
Well, I thought it worked well with the scene, you know. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So she saves them, hits Ezekiel with the car, and then drops him off at a motel, which I don't know why you wouldn't get out of state, considering she has a car that seems to be working pretty fine, considering she just busted through a whole diner window and rammed into a person.
Yeah.
It seems completely fine. So, naturally, she does not go out of state. She takes them to a motel and then leaves these 3 teenage girls who have proven themselves to not listen to orders and not stay in one place while they're sleeping, to go back to the diner and have a mental conversation with Ezekiel Sims. And then she goes back. I don't even remember what that conversation was about. I just remember him saying the same thing, something about, you can't stop me, stock villain dialogue, basically.
Okay.
So
all right,
I'm going to fast forward. She drops the kids off with Ben, and then Ben has to take his sister-in-law to the hospital because she's about to give birth to Peter, who they treat like the plague in this movie because they don't mention his name once.
True.
So they're going to the hospital, and then Mattie ends up picking up her face on a camera, and this is why meanwhile, Cassie's in Peru, and you know that dude who had a red face paint and a net over his face?
Yes, the Black Lagoon. Yeah.
He looks absolutely normal. He looks like he's sitting on a beach kicking back with some pina coladas or something. It's just like, let me tell you about your mother. Back when she was on this island, like, he just seems like a normal dude. I'm shocked the transformation he went through. Basically, he Doctor Stranges the soul out of her.
Yes,
and then she has an experience where
another out-of-body experience where she actually gets to speak to her mom.
Yeah, and her mom was only researching the spiders because she needed to cure Madam Webb from being blind by some
she has some kind of
neuromuscular
disease,
gravitas.
Yes,
something.
Exactly.
I don't want to be disrespectful, but I literally forgot the name. So
no, that's fine. So all this time, Cassandra thought that her mother was reckless for going
with
into
Ezekiel
the Amazon
Sims while he was researching spiders with her mother in the Amazon right before she died.
But she needed to go because she needed to save her baby's life, right? From this disease.
I don't know why they didn't establish that earlier. It just seems really weird that that's a midpoint plot.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and you want to finish up you okay? What scene now?
So Madam Webb naturally is allowed to leave the country.
Yes, my point. Twice. That was right. She's on the run.
She's on the run. But, she's literally wanted by police. Yeah. She is allowed to leave the country to go to Peru and then come back.
Yep.
Just in time for the main fight when she jumps out of a Calvin Klein side, hits Ezekiel Sims, runs over backwards.
Again.
And then when Ezekiel Sims comes over, she shocks the defibrillator, or she has the girl shock the defibrillator, and then bam, hit him with a big old pulse on the roof of the car.
On the roof of the ambulance.
That totals the ambulance and does nothing to Sims.
I've never seen that before.
So Madam Webb, being the great leader she is, and the great mother figure she is, takes these 3 teenage girls who are known to not follow rules or listen to directions into a massive death trap, as she literally calls it. And then she gives them a bunch of torches so they can light all the fireworks in the factory.
Right.
And then she blows it all up.
Well,
and
she's
for
still in
some
there.
reason, there is a staircase behind a wall, which I would have got if it was like being covered up actively or if there was some sort of tarp over it. But no, there's just a staircase behind a wall. So they run up there and they get to the roof. There's a helicopter there for them. She ends up blowing up the helicopter because all those fireworks. And then Ezekiel Sims, all the girls try to fight him one by one. They all end up in literally the same situation, which is hanging onto a bar and screaming, Cassie! So, is naturally, Madame Webb being the great leader she is and the great mother figure she is, astral projects. She starts projecting futures so that she can literally help all of them at once. Which seems absolutely broken. Considering this is 2003, she could write the entire timeline, rewrite it all, by literally just choosing to make a future happen.
That's right.
So, there's that. And then...
I think we're getting close to the end.
For whatever reason, Madame Webb falls into the water. By the way, Ezekiel Sims gets deleted by that PepsiCo logo.
Yeah, the S took him out.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then she falls under the water. She gets blinded by a firecracker, which they don't make clear because she's falling and her eyes look normal until she gets out of the water.
Yeah, and they
then rise
CPR
her blue
on
for
her.
whatever reason.
Right.
Which there's that long scene in the motel where they start where she starts showing like her own CPR. So okay. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the movie,
set up and pay off.
At the end of the movie, she is so great at her powers that she's literally using it for the most menial things, like predicting when Anya's going to sneeze and knowing what food they're going to get. Mm-hmm. She is also blind and sitting in a wheelchair like Professor X, staring out of a webbed window that she literally can't see. And then at the end of the movie, by the way, she's wearing this big visor. For some reason.
It looked really ridiculous.
It's not a good look.
It didn't fit her face well.
So at the end of the movie, we finally see that super suit that they've been advertising Madame Webb in, and it's not even fully there. She's literally like some sort of ghost. And then we finally see the Spider-Woman suited up in the last 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, they are on screen for not even a full minute. Like, 30 seconds of the movie, we see the Spider-Woman in action. So, please don't pay for this movie thinking that you're going to see an awesome action figure where you can see an action flick where you can see a bunch of Marvel heroes that you know and love beating up Ezekiel Sims, who is supposed to be Spider-Man's ally in the comics, but okay, I'll forgive that. If you want to watch them beat up Ezekiel Sims, go watch a different movie that's not this one.
Okay. All right, so that's in a nutshell what the movie's about.
Oh, yeah, and Mike Epps' character dies within 3 seconds of being on screen.
Yeah, right.
That's her first vision.
A waste of a character. All right, so the cast. Dakota Johnson plays Cassandra Webb.
One more thing.
Yes, Keith.
You know, one of the girls says, you know, Ben loves being an uncle because he thinks it's all of the fun and none of the responsibility. And then she says that's what he thinks. Madam Webb, I mean. Mm-hmm. And then also... The Santiago dude, that's the Spider-Man. He says, when you take responsibility, great power will come to you. That's the dollar store version of with great power comes great responsibility. That sounds like what somebody would use if with great power comes great responsibility was copyrighted and they had to find a workaround.
Yeah, I don't understand. It seems that they wanted to connect Peter Parker, but
they were uncannily avoiding.
They didn't want to connect Peter Parker, which I don't know why. I don't understand, because we all know, and it just seems so dumb, you know, where they wouldn't even mention May Parker.
Yes,
right.
They avoid
May, whatever
they
her
avoid
name was,
naming Peter because there's a scene at the baby shower, which is kind of a waste of time, where she's about to say the word Peter, and then a balloon pops, so we can't hear it. And then we hear Richard Parker's name mentioned, but we don't even get to see him because he's apparently in like Siberia.
Yeah, have no idea where Peter's father is.
She doesn't know where he is, which is kind of disturbing considering she is also ready to give birth. So that doesn't sound great to me that you're not there. They don't name the baby.
Nope.
and they keep putting in references to Uncle Ben.
Yes.
With like great
So
power
we
comes
get
great
it.
responsibility.
We get it.
Or him getting shot in Queens.
Right. Okay.
It's like we understand this is connected to Spider-Man. Put Spider-Man in the movie.
Right.
And the worst part is this is a completely different Spider-Man. I did the math. This means that if this is part of the MCU, that means Peter Parker is 13 in 2016, which is the time of Civil War, which means Tony Stark has hired somebody fresh out of middle school to go fight two superpower dudes, a guy with wings, and a literal world-bending witch.
All right, now let's say this again. Let me understand this. How old was Peter Parker in Civil War?
15.
15. Okay. The timeline, according to the timeline, this movie is taking place in 2003, right? Which would be the year that Parker was born.
Yeah.
Right? So that you're saying in 2018, that will put Peter Parker at the age of 15, which is wrong because he was older than 15.
Yeah. He would have been 17 by Infinity War.
Okay.
Lucky for him, though, he gets the benefit of a 5-year age gap, so he's 17 by the time of Endgame.
I see. So, okay. I don't know.
Yeah, what I'm saying is Peter Parker would have had to have lied about his age in Civil War.
So he was not born in 2003. He had to have been born a couple of years before that.
Yeah.
Okay. So either they're just referring to a generic Peter Parker or they got the timeline wrong.
And I don't think Sony would be one to get the timeline in their own movies wrong. So
okay, well, they got the movie wrong. Dakota Johnson is Cassandra Webb. You got Sydney Sweeney as Julia Cornwall, which I don't know why they changed her last name because in the comic book she's Julia Carpenter.
I think Cornwall is her middle name. Okay. Which is weird because I don't know people who go by their middle name as their last name. I'm sure people go by their middle name as their first name, like Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, he has an initial. Yeah, he has an initial as first name.
Okay. So she's Spider-Woman.
Like a C. Montgomery Burns.
Got it. She is Spider-Woman, all right? She eventually takes over as...
No, she's not Spider-Woman. She's Spider-Woman in 30 seconds of the movie.
Well, okay, in the comics, she becomes Spider-Woman, and she eventually takes over as Madam Web after Cassandra. So we have Isabel Merced. Is it Merced? Is that pronounced? I think it's Merced. Okay, Anya Corazon, who is Aranya, which means... Spider.
Spanish.
All right. She was also in the movie. She was the math whiz. Celeste O'Connor played Mattie Franklin, who is another Spider-Woman.
Also very rich in this movie.
And is the niece of Jane Jonah Jameson, like you said before. Okay. And then we had Tahar Rahim as Ezekiel Sims. All right. So I wanted to spend some time talking about why we're seeing these kind of movies. Well, I want to explain to you why Sony has the power to be in this position to make these Spider-Man films.
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just thinking about if Ezekiel Sims was a Mortal Kombat character, his final move would just be choking somebody and tossing them across the room.
Right. We are big fans of NPR, so there's a show called Planet Money. If you've never heard it,
my favorite,
we highly recommend it. So they did a segment called Sony and Marvel and the Amazing Spider-Man Rice Saga. All right. So, and this was actually they recorded it first in 2022, and then they updated it for 23 because of the release of Across the Spider-Verse. Right? Did I get that movie right?
Across the Spider-Verse was a good one. I'm just thinking about No Way Home.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, I was talking about Across the Spider-Verse.
And I was thinking
nobody mentioned No Way Home. Okay. All right. There you go. All right.
You mentioned it.
Okay. I'm not going to mention it anymore. So in 1993, Marvel Studios was non-existent, right? Marvel didn't have a studio. They had Marvel Films. And the idea was that they were going to sell the rights to their comic book characters
so they could keep
to different distributions, right? To different movie distributions, so that they can sell more comic books and toys.
So the mouse sat everyone down and he was like, Everybody will get their fair share. Ha! So he sold off the X-Men and the Fantastic Four to 20th Century Fox.
Correct.
Threw Hulk at Universal.
Yes.
And then chucked Spider-Man right at Sony.
Right.
And they gave Sony the best deal because they have 1,500 total characters with all the Spider-Man villains.
All of the Spider-Man
and all
characters.
the Spider-Man adjacent heroes and versions.
Yeah, right. And with that agreement, Sony would pay Marvel $10 million for every Spider-Man movie that they made. Okay. And then in addition to that, Marvel gets 5% of the revenue from
and all
film.
the merch sales, right?
I think they split that. All right. Sony and Marvel, I think they split the money from toys and merchandise. Okay.
Isn't it sold on the Disney website, though? Right. I don't know why Disney would be sharing that profit.
So we know Tobey Maguire made 3 films, the first 3 films, right, which were very successful. And then they rebooted it. All right. So 2007 was the last Tobey Maguire movie. That was Spider-Man 3, right? 5 years later came Andrew Garfield. So what they did was they rebooted the whole thing and started from scratch for some reason. Okay.
Man, why didn't they make this movie happen in the Andrew Garfield timeline?
Right. And then 2014 was The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which nearly destroyed the Spider-Verse. So here's the thing. In order for Sony to keep the Spider-Man rights, they have to keep making a Spider-Man film about every 5 years. All right, 5 years and 9 months. And if they don't, the rights go back to Marvel, which is the reason why you're constantly seeing Marvel coming up with these Spider-Man themed, because Spidey is not particularly in the films, but his rogues gallery of villains, his relatives, anybody associated with Spider-Man can be made into their own spin-off film. All right, because they can do that, and they have to keep doing that. And honestly, I don't even know if there's an end game for this, right? Like, how long can they keep making these films? Apparently, there is no end to this, So
you know what I just find peculiar? Sony has a really long clock here. Like, they have over 5.5 years to make 5 3/4 years to make good movies, but they just keep pushing out garbage. It's like, I mean, I don't know why they don't just sink all their time and effort into making one good movie every 2 or 3 years instead of coming out with consistent garbage movies that get really bad Rotten Tomato scores. Like, on Valentine's Day alone, like, Madame Web's score was 14 and now it's 13, which leaves it 2 points less than Morbius with a 15% Rotten Tomato score.
Yeah.
The Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider has a higher score. The Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance has a higher score. Cowboys and Aliens has a higher score. The Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi have higher scores.
All right, we're going down a rabbit hole. Take it easy. Easy.
I don't know how it's almost astonishing that they managed to make a movie that is in the teens with their ratings, with their Rotten Tomatoes ratings, not once, but twice on 2 different occasions. This happened.
Well, I hope this is a wake-up call for Sony that they can't continue.
They re-released Morbius because they thought people actually liked it. I mean, I don't think this changes anything.
Well, it's a good thing that we still have Marvel. Now, I know Marvel is going through their share of bumps and bruises, but
I quite like
Marvel. So at least Marvel and Sony were able to work out a deal where they could bring Spider-Man into the MCU.
This is a strenuous
for a few films, right? And we know that Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, Spidey was there. Everybody loved it. Civil War, we were so shocked to see Spider-Man in the trailer. It was wonderful.
Underoos.
Right, exactly. And then, of course, Tom Holland had his 3 films, and now
6 total.
3 more his own individual films, starring Tom Holland. But now, what is the future of Spider-Man? There's no talk of what's going to happen next. When is the next movie going to come out? We don't know. But to Sony's credit, they still have Miles Morales. All right. And these animated films, the Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse.
They have managed to.
Well, that one hasn't come out yet, but these two films have been blockbusters for Sony, so they're doing something right.
Yeah, they have managed to not tarnish Miles Morales' movies,
and they better not.
Yeah. And that's probably because they have different people working on Miles Morales than they do on the rest of the Sony.
Because Miles Morales is the future of the Spider-Verse. All right, I don't know if people want to hear that, I want to believe it, but it's time for Miles to have his own. As a matter of fact, I think we had this conversation before that it's time to bring Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and Miles Morales, whoever that actor is going to be, into the same movie. I think that's the next step.
So this doesn't look great for the SSU.
No, it doesn't.
The next movie is Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven the Hunter. That is expected to be released in August. Chances are we're not going to review that film because it looks to be an R-rated film. We can't.
Did you look up the rating?
Well, I heard. I didn't even see the trailer, but I heard that the trailer is very violent. All right.
Okay, but so was Echo. I watched that.
Well, no. In the trailer, Echo's trailer was not violent.
No, but I watched the whole show.
No, I understand that, but here's the thing.
And again, that show wasn't that violent.
Keith, in the trailer for Echo, it was not violent. All right. But I was still cautious of you watching it, which is why I watched it first, and I realized, okay, this is fine. You can watch it. Kraven the Hunter is not going to be Echo. All right. If it's R-rated, it's going to be violent.
Why don't you just watch it?
I'll watch the trailer, but look, trust me.
By the way, I will absolutely positively lose it if they manage to make a Kraven the Hunter movie without Spider-Man, because his entire thing is hunting Spider-Man.
Okay.
That is almost all he does.
I don't want to burst your bubble, but you're not going to see Spider-Man and Kraven the Hunter.
Of course not, because Sony does not care.
Right, okay.
Sony just wants to make money. However dwindling that amount of money might be.
Yeah, I think, again, if you're in the business to make money, you see your business model is not working.
Has a movie ever made less than $1 million?
Well, yeah, but nothing.
I don't mean like back when money had a different value.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Because I know money from 1980 has different value than 2020, and 2020 is a different value than 2024.
No, it depends on the film and the budget of the film, and the number of theaters or screens that the film is going to be released in. So you have films. Usually the lower budgeted films get a limited screen release. So yes, there's a possibility you can have a movie make less than $1 million. That's not a good thing, but it's possible. Yeah, but we're talking about big budget blockbuster Spider-Man. All right, which we know
the absolute failure of a movie. They cannot get
away with making taking an $80 million movie or $100 million movie and and only making $15 million. No good. All right, so
this movie is riddled with more holes than Quicksilver.
Okay, all right.
The plot is so badly damaged.
Yes, I think we made our point.
I can mistake this for a piece of gravel the way it's been ran over so many times.
All right, I think we've
I can mistake it for Ezekiel Sims the way it's been ran over.
We've beaten this movie. Okay, enough. I think people get it. We don't recommend you to see it. If you want to wait,
if you really want to see it. And by the way, it's not even a memeable bad movie. I don't
even know what that means.
You know how Morbius had that meme where it's it's Morbin time?
No. Okay.
All
right. So thank you, everyone.
You need to get on the internet.
This is it. This is our spoiler review. Yeah. We don't like doing these kind of spoiler reviews. So we hope this will be maybe one of the last ones that we do with a movie of this caliber. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Keith, where can people find us?
Well, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fatherson Galaxy, website fathersongalaxy.com. We have a merch store, which is fathersongalaxy.myspreadshop.com, and our Patreon page, patreon.com/fathersongalaxy.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So, hey, look, all right, we got this out of the way. Madam Web is done and over with. We got Star Wars coming out, so The Bad Batch. We also have Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur that we want to cover. We got Jedi, Young Jedi Adventures. We haven't even spoken about X-Men. All right, X-Men 97 coming out in March. All right. We'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. Okay. So please tune in. We still got a lot to discuss.
And tell us in the comments what you think is going to happen to the SSU.
Yeah. What do you think should happen? Who should run it?
You know what the SSU is, right?
Yes. It's the Sony Spider-Man universe.
Ah,
yes.
You knew.
I do my research. All right.
You do get on the internet.
Leave your comments. Let us know. Maybe you like Madam Webb.
In which case, who hurt you?
Maybe you liked it. Tell us why. Okay. All right. If you didn't like it, tell us why. We just would love to have a conversation. So until next time, take care. And we will see you again.
Hopefully.